Hello and welcome back to Good Soup Games. I'm Graf and today I'm back on my Hunter to showcase this Void Prismatic build that has absolutely gone insane since the launch of Act 3 and the new seasonal artifact mods. Take a look. And with that, wasting no time, we're going to jump straight into the build, and at the core of this build is the exotic class item for the Hunter. The first perk of choice for the class item is Spirit of Galanor, where super hits return super energy, and the second perk choice is Spirit of the Falcon, which will grant our void weapons volatile rounds upon merging from invisibility. Both of these working in tandem together is what allows this build to be incredibly potent across multiple facets of this game, whether that be Grandmaster Nightfalls or stuff like Dual Destiny, as you'll see in this footage here. So let's jump into the rest of this build so I can show you how everything synergizes together. The first aspect we'll be using is Stylish Executioner, as this is really the only thing that will allow us to get our volatile rounds proccing with Falcons. Upon applying a debuff to an enemy and then killing that enemy, we will then go into our invisibility, which will then lead us into the rest of this build. I'm running Winter's Shroud, so when I dodge near enemies, I'm applying slow stacks to them. Upon killing that debuffed enemy, I will then be granted invisibility. My dodge of choice is Gambler's Dodge, so when I do dodge near enemies and slow them, I'm also getting my melee charge back, leading me to my melee of choice. I will be using Withering Blade, as this will allow me to apply more slow stacks to enemies and also getting an extra charge in case I need it for backup. Following this, my grenade will also act as another source of debuffing targets. I will be using Dustfield grenades so that I can slow more enemies in a larger radius. Again, leading directly back into Stylish Executioner and Spirit of the Falcon. My super of choice is Deadfall Tether, as this seems to be the most consistent way to get super energy back from Spirit of the Falcon. I have used a multitude of supers and the return seems to be a bit hit and miss, but the most consistent by far has been Tether. This also nicely leads back into Stylish Executioner, as every enemy tethered will class as a debuffed enemy, again allowing me to go invisible and proc in my volatile weapons. As with every build, the Fragments is where you really start to push the needle, so let's get into them. I'm running Facet of Dawn, so when I do throw out my Withering Blades, I'm getting Radiant in return along with Volatile on my weapons. It's the perfect synergy for big damage. Following on from that, I'm running Facet of Protection simply for the added damage resistance, and with the artifact mod that I am using later, you'll see why this is a great combination to have. After that, I'm running Facet of Ruin, so if I do freeze any targets with my Dust-Filled grenades or Withering Blades, they shatter and do an increased area of effect damage to surrounding enemies. Next on the list is Facet of Courage, which will allow my Arc, Solar or Void abilities to deal increased damage to targets affected with darkness debuffs, which will be mostly all of the time. The last fragments on the list are all dealer's choice, so just pick one that works best for your build. Facet of Awakening will allow you to spawn elemental pickups matching the damage type of your super. If you use a strand weapon in your primary slot, Facet of Bravery is the perfect choice for this. It will grant your strand weapons unraveling rounds every time you get a powered melee kill. And Facet of Purpose will give you an overshield when picking up an Orb of Power. However, with my weapon of choice, this fragment is completely redundant. And one final note to round this setup up. The jumps are completely personal preference. I prefer triple jump, but just use what you are more comfortable with. At the cornerstone of every build are the stats and which ones to prioritise. So here are my recommendations on which stats to prioritise and in which order to prioritise them in. For every PVE build, the most important stat you need to prioritise is resilience. This just allows you to be more tanky and damage resistant against everything in the game. My second priority stat is intellect, just so that your super is up as much as possible, even though we are running Falcon. Following that, my third most important stat would be discipline, just so that your dust-filled grenades are up as much as possible in case you need them in a pinch. After that, I would focus on recovery, but I'll show you later why that is less important in this build. Mobility and strength are really not that important in this build due to our fragment and how we have set the actual build up. Of course you can choose to prioritise these stats if you wish, but in my opinion they're just not needed and can be as low as possible. Now it's the fun part, the weapons. My weapon of choice is Arago. I farmed for this last season countless times and never got the drop I wanted until the other day, when the role I was looking for last season landed right into my lap and it was perfect across the board. This by far one of the best ad clearing weapons in the game, with or without the artifact mods. So going into next season, this build will still be incredibly potent to clear ads. I mentioned earlier why recovery wasn't super important in this build, and this is why. Repulsor Brace, paired with Spirit of the Falcon and Stylish Executioner, gives us a constant overshield every time we defeat a debuffed enemy. My second perk column of choice is Onslaught, so I can pump out as much damage in this shortest amount of time. Another good pick for this perk column would also be Golden Tricorn. This will give you a flat 15% damage increase after getting one kill, and 50% if you can get another kill matching the same ability type. The reason I love Arago so much is because of the wildcard origin trait. This is one of my favourite origin traits in the game. It allows you to get passive kills for getting kills. Following that, my Arago has Flared Magwell and a Reload Masterwork, allowing me to reload as fast as possible so I can go from enemy to enemy. With Act 3 we have some spicy new artifact mods which lends perfectly for this build. Sustained Fire reads, continuously damaging combatants with an auto rifle grants you damage resistance. Targeting Autoloader reads, while you have an auto rifle equipped, defeating combatants reloads your equipped weapon and temporarily increases weapon damage. Awards bonus progress when dealing final blows while surrounded. And finally, Overload Auto Rifle, allowing us to stun pesky Overload champions which love to teleport. The new exotic Choir of One auto rifle would also work very well with this build. However, this build is centered around making your primary weapon as lethal as possible, and Choir of One is a special weapon. I ran this in a Grandmaster Nightfall yesterday using Choir of One as my primary weapon, but the ammo economy was horrendous, so I think I would prefer to just use Arago. Hammerhead is a great choice for this build too, as it will allow you to get volatile rounds for your heavy weapon, but again this is just personal preference. On my hammerhead, I am running Rampage plus Killing Tally just for that added lethality on ad clearance if I need it, but Arago alone melts through ads. To top this all off, let's talk about armor mods. On my helmet I am running Harmonic Siphon so that when I get a kill with my Arago, I am spawning an Orb of Power. I'm also running this with Heavy Ammo Finder and Heavy Ammo Scout for the team. On my arms I am running Heavy Handed, so when I get a kill with my powered melee I'm also spawning an Orb of Power, and Impact Induction so that my melee hits regenerate my grenade. On my chest piece I run resistance mods based on the activity. Arc, Solar and Void are usually my go-tos, but also Strand and Stasis are good picks as well depending on the activity. In my legs I'm running 2 Void Surges so that my Arago and my Hammerhead do increased damage after picking up an Orb of Power. On my class item I'm running Bomber just so that I can get my grenade back if I need to, if I'm in a pinch. I'm also running Reaper so that when I use my class ability and get a kill after using my class ability, I spawn an Orb of Power, giving me yet another way to grab an Orb of Power. And lastly, I am running Powerful Attraction so that when I do dodge, I collect any Orb of Power that is in the area. I also just want to mention, as I did in my previous video, that if you have the Solstice Rekindled armor from a previous Solstice event, you can use this to get +1 resilience. Using sites like D2 Armor Picker, you can toggle this on so that when it's calculating your stats, it is including this in that equation. It's a really handy thing to have, and I basically use it on all of my builds. And there we have it. This is my Prismatic Void Hunter build perfected. A build that is probably going to make me switch back to my Hunter after being on a Warlock for about 4 months. As always, it has been a pleasure, and as you watch this footage of me being toxic to Mystic in the background, a like, comment, and subscribe would be much appreciated. We have been completely stunned with the success of the last video and the engagement we got from you guys, so a massive thank you from us. I hope you have learned something new from this video or has given you inspiration to try this build out. But until next time, this has been Good Soup.